Hey guys, welcome back to Calgary Barbell, and we are about to dive into Form Check Friday. If you guys are interested in the thick hat or the classic logo stuff, they are now released, so go head over to calgarybarbell.com/apparel and check those out. What you're about to get yourselves into is probably about 15 to 20 minutes of us looking at viewer-submitted videos, picking them apart, trying to give everybody technical advice on how to become more efficient and better lifters. We've taken some liberties with some of the shots and some of the ways we're setting things up, so hopefully you guys like the new style. And without further ado, actually, one more thing. If any of you are interested in being featured on Form Check Friday, send your videos to formcheckfriday@gmail.com. The submission guidelines are in the description box below, so please try to adhere to those if you can. And we select them by lottery, 5 every week. So don't be sad if you don't get selected. We have just over 600 at the moment, so lots and lots to go through. We don't delete them, so if you've submitted once, your submission is still in there. All right, let's get down to it. So our first submission today comes from none other than the Green Arrow himself. Now, there's no description or anything like that, so we're just gonna open this up over yonder. And here we go. All right, so the Green Arrow is doing some sumo deadlifts here. I'm just gonna let this play through and see what we can come up with. All right, so I think the biggest thing here is we're kind of setting into a pretty flexed low back position, which I think can be a bit of a disadvantage in a lot of cases. And I think that's just leading to a little bit less than ideal positioning at lockout. So right as we pull in here, we've got this little bit of flexion here, and we talk about this all the time on the channel. But if we could get a little bit more extension, we might be a little bit smoother through the lockout. Now that being said, the actual mechanics of the pull, this push off the floor, the sort of stability in here in the lats and the upper back and the bracing is actually quite good. So as we come up, it's a push and then hips through. I would watch for the knees. Watch right there. I would watch and try to make sure we're not coming unlocked right there. So as you kind of settle into that lockout, that knee does come kind of almost partially unlocked, and I would want to make sure that that isn't exaggerated when the loads get heavier. And you can tell as we go on, that sort of low back flexion in this general area here does start to get a little bit more exaggerated. So there's this sort of push coming from the quads, and the back and the hips aren't strong enough to sort of maintain that position, or we're just not strong in that position. So I would try to work towards building, creating, maintaining a little bit more flexion. Excuse me, I'm a little bit sick right now, so I'm just trying to soldier on through here. But if we can get a little bit tighter through there, it's probably going to be a good thing. If you want to switch to being completely flat backed as a deadlifter, you're likely going to have to unload a fair bit until you can pull reps and full sets of reps without any of that flexion. So yeah, hopefully that helps you, Green Arrow. Best of luck with your deadlift adventures. Our next submission here comes from Chris F. Chris R. I can't read my own writing there. I believe it's Chris F though. So Chris has got some low bar squats. He says he's a big fan of the channel. This is the second time ever low bar squatting with any reasonable amount of weight. It's a 2-count pause, 7 RPE. And he tells us to keep up the good work. Well, we will do our best, Chris. All right, here we go. All right, so it looks like, judging by the playback length here, this might just be a single. But it looks good, and we're gonna have to kind of make do with just a single, kind of dive into this a little bit. So with this grip, I like it. Like, it looks like it's putting all this in really good positions. But watch this fingers here. You can get called for a re-rack or made to re-rack it in competition if you're too far. Here, I'll make myself bigger to kind of show you guys what I'm talking about. So if this is the bar here and you're gripping like this and not all of your fingers are on the bar, you can be made to re-rack. So make sure that if you're going to take a false grip, all of your fingers are touching the bar. It's again one of those tiny things that's maybe a little bit to the ref's discretion, but I don't want to see anybody get called on that, so let's do a bit better job of that. The other thing we're seeing here is just a tiny little bit of a dip out of the pause, which is generally something I try to advocate against, because then we're sort of re-engaging that stretch reflex, right? So dip and then up, and it's very, very subtle if you guys can catch that. But other than that, the squat itself looks good, mechanically looks good. I can't see the feet, so I'm not really sure what's going on down there. You'll see kind of the left foot, you know, a little rolled in, maybe a little on the toes, but you managed to hold a pretty damn good position, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. Trunk and bracing looks fine. Maybe a tiny little bit of roll in the upper back. Right as you come out of the holes, we see those shoulder blades just edge up, just creep up just the tiniest little bit. So maybe that's something to work on. Making sure we maintain tightness in here, in those back boobs that I just drew on you, or in your lats, however you want to think about that. But making sure that we keep those shoulder blades locked in. We didn't see too much deviation there, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. But if you want to get picky, which is kind of what we're doing here, what we're on this channel to do right now, that would be what I'd look at. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Let's see, we got Christian C up next. And Christian says, thanks for running this program. It's a huge help even just seeing other people's critiques. This is his first time submitting. He thinks he's got everything right in terms of formatting. Did 6 reps, PR on sumo deadlift, 335 pounds. He's always done conventional until about 6 weeks ago. Had a little trouble keeping a neutral spine in conventional. Would end up with a slightly sore back the next day. After watching your sumo guide, decided to try sumo. Biggest thing, working on bracing. Cool, yeah. So let's take a look at Christian's sumo deadlift PR here. So you can see we're still losing a little bit of that back off the floor, right? We're having you kind of come up into a little bit of flexion right as you initiate. There's dogs creeping in on me here. Right as you initiate that lift, we're not quite getting full extension here. So in some cases it can be a little bit of a tough time sort of propriocepting or feeling where your body is in space or what extension feels like. And in some cases the belt can actually detract from your ability or give you enough stimulus that it kind of throws you off from trying to maintain that. The other thing we see there, and if I can get this video to scrub, there we go. Pretty decent position. As soon as we start to pull, look at how much those hips shoot up behind you. We're not being patient enough off the floor. We're not maintaining position well enough. I think perhaps we could get these knees back, butt back, while keeping all of this exactly stacked in the same place, and that's gonna force that last little bit of extension. And I think that'll allow you to maintain position a little bit better as you come up off the floor, but we're seeing a lot of those hips rise up back behind you. So I would like to see a little bit better work out of the quads off the floor if maintaining that back position is, you know, something that you're after. We're getting a little bit of color change on some of these reps. Either that or my cold meds are playing tricks on my mind. But that's gonna be the biggest thing there. So your upper back looks fine. I think your lower body positioning just needs a little bit of work. Like, we're getting a lot of push back. So the quads and knee extension aren't doing quite enough work off the floor. We're not getting enough sort of bias towards knee extension as we start the lift. Just watch again this transition from position to where we actually start to pull. So I'm actually gonna try to illustrate this as best I can. So this is your hip. Oh, I cleared it, dang it. This is your hip. And this is your hip. when we actually come off the floor. So huge difference there. And I'm hoping that everybody can kind of see what I'm talking about. So that's the number one thing I would worry about. The back extension stuff, come see, come saw, you know, a little of column A, a little of column B, not something I would, again, spend all of your time worrying about, but for the efficiency of the pull, you'd do much better off to try to maintain closer to this position as you initiate the lift. And I think getting everything back a little bit more is going to be key for that. So hopefully that helps you, Christian. Let's see what we got up next. We have a video from Denmios. I believe that's how you pronounce his or her name. This is their submission to Form Check Friday. This is their deadlift. They're 52 years old, have been powerlifting for about 3 years, not competing yet, thinking about it in the future, if they have an old boy league or something like that. So he says he seems he's tilting forward in his deadlift, and hopefully we can help him out with getting better. All right, let us take a look. Whoops, lost myself there for a second. So we're just gonna let this play through, see what we can notice. I like the sheer number of barbells in your gym. That's a pretty dang good setup. So this to me looks really efficient. There might be a little bit of kind of tilting forward off the floor, but I think that's just your hips being set a tiny bit too low when you start. That's actually not enough sort of hip height change that I would even really worry about it. This looks really good to me. Back's locked in, decent enough position. I think you might be, I think that the main issue here is that we're rocking a little bit too far back on the heels before we start. And then we're coming back into forefoot. So there, we're a little bit too far back on the heels. So if I draw a very nice looking circle around the end of the bar here, and then we fast forward another couple seconds, see we pull back more. I think it would have been better if we left it in that position, because as we come up, that bar comes back forward, and now we're ending up pretty much straight up and down from where that initial line was. So that might be the sensation of tipping forward that you're talking about, and I think it's because you're planting yourself a little bit too much back on your heels as you go to start the lift. So in my opinion, you could stay a bit forward more in your setup, stay over the bar more, a little more pressure through the forefoot and through that sort of big toe cueing we like to talk about. And I think that's gonna help you stay a little bit more static and a little bit less dynamic when we're talking about the start of your deadlift, because every rep we seem to be really far back, and as soon as we initiate, we get that little bit of forward travel. And I think that's what's kind of producing that weird feeling that you're talking about. And I can definitely see it in sort of expressed as a bit of a bar path deviation here. So that would be sort of what I would first examine. Hopefully that helps you out. All right, what do we got next? We have our last submission today from Stormp, and Stormp is, where is Stormp? Okay, I lost Stormp's email. Give me 1 second here. Stormp. Conventional deadlift reps. Tristan S. Pack. Stormp. No context. No nothing. Just some shirtless dungeon vids. Alright. Let's take a look. So decent enough starting position. Subsequent reps look a lot better than that first one did. I think we were struggling a little bit with finding sort of an ideal start position. However, when you have the eccentric phase on a deadlift and you're able to set it down, a lot of times you'll set it down into a position that's much stronger sometimes than you start with, right? I think you tried to sit down a little bit too much on this first rep, similar to actually what Denmios was doing. So we pulled down, and then you can see as the bar comes up off the floor, the butt kind of goes back again. So the butt goes back and up. And then on subsequent reps, you set your hips a little higher to start with, and you're able to effectively just kind of push the bar off the floor a little bit better. The other thing I would do is try to release the tension off the bar in the bottom a little more, so that you're coming from a dead stop every time. You really want to try to challenge yourself with that starting position. especially if it's a little bit tough to get it going on that first rep. The best bet is to make sure that you're almost loose between reps, so you can recreate that feeling of creating the tension of the bar, finding your start position, doing that every single rep, and practicing deadlifts. In this case, I would recommend anyways, as like, 4 or 5 singles almost, as opposed to a set of 4 or 5. Sometimes there's a lot of difference between how people do their rep sets and they do their singles. And I think those differences can sometimes account for losses in transferability. So losses in how much of our training transfers into our actual 1 repetition max strength. Lockout looks solid. The movement itself looks solid. It's just that start position. And you guys will notice a trend, I think, if you've been watching the channel for any period of time. Start position is so important, and really dictates a lot about how that deadlift's going to go, especially when we're talking about a single, right? Because if we watch, like, I would rate this first one maybe like a 6.5 RP, 7 RP maybe. But then as the reps go on, like the second rep looks faster, smoother, the third rep faster, smoother again. So we're getting better as this set goes on, which tells me we need to put in a little bit more work on that first rep and make more of our reps feel like that first rep. Try to recreate what we're doing in that first rep and learn to do it better by doing that for reps instead of maybe cheating a little bit, if you want to call it that. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Again, if you want to submit to Form Check Friday, go ahead and send it to formcheckfriday@gmail.com, and we will see you guys next time.